Good afternoon. I welcome the participants to a session on strategic management. Today, the discussion will be on the area of corporate governance. So, it is a sort of a control mechanism in the corporate head office of the companies. The corporate governance refers to the system of rules, practices, and processes by which the company is directed, controlled, and managed. It encompasses the relationship between the various stakeholders of the organization, such as the shareholders, the management, board of directors, employees, customers, the vendors supplying the inputs, as well as the community. The significance of this is effective corporate governance is very crucial for a long-term success of the organization and sustainability. It helps as to establish a framework for responsible decision making, accountability, that is responsibility, and transparency, which enhances the investors' confidence on the organization and protects the interest of the various stakeholders of the organization. If you see the key principles, the corporate governance is guided by several key principles that includes the following, like the first one is accountability. It refers to ensuring that those responsible for company decisions as well as actions are held accountable and responsible for the conduct and performance they have been entrusted or assigned. Then second is with respect to transparency, disclosing the relevant and accurate information to the stakeholders from time to time, including the financial reports, that is balance sheet, the income statement, profit and loss, and other such related financial statements, business strategies, and executive compensation that has been decided by the management. Next comes the relates to the fairness, treating all the stakeholders fairly and equitably, and equal justice to all, considering rights and interest of them, and avoiding the conflicts of the interest. With respect to the responsibility, balancing the interest of the various stakeholders, that includes the stockholder, the employees of the organizations, the consumers who buy the product and avail the services, the wider community which pursuing the organization's key objectives. And then comes the independence, promoting an independent as well as the diverse board of directors, which includes the functional directors as well as the non-functional directors that can effectively oversee the management and make impartial decisions. With respect to the components of corporate governance, first comes the board of directors or the CHO, corporate head office of the organizations, registered office. The board plays a critical role in the corporate governance. The board of directors includes the functional and non-functional directors, independent directors, providing oversight and also the providing the guidance and the strategic direction in which the organization must move to achieve its long-term objectives. It appoints senior executives at the CHO, corporate head office. It approves the major decisions because relates to the policy decision of the top management and ensures the compliance with respect to the laws and regulations. With respect to the shareholders or the stockholders have rights as well as responsibilities in the corporate control mechanism, that is governance, including the voting on the key matters, then electing the directors, and the receiving the dividends from time to time. They can influence the company policies, that is the guidelines that is set for each and every functional departments for smooth functioning, which is well understood to be by the employees through shareholder activity. With respect to the management, the company's executives as well as the company's the managers in different levels are responsible for the day-to-day business operations and activities, implementing the strategy based on the plan made and achieving the performance targets. They are accountable and responsible to the board of directors as well as to the stakeholders, stockholders, or the shareholders of the company. Then comes with respect to the role and responsibility of the auditors. Independent auditors provides an objective assessment of the company's financial statements, ensuring accuracy, fairness, and compliance with respect to the set accounting standards. As you know, auditors, they have three different categories. One is internal auditors, those who are in the audit section of the organization. Then with respect to external auditors, one is the government audit, that is AG or the local fund audit, and also the statutory auditors are being assigned to ensure the fair disclosure of the accounting statements of the organizations. With respect to the regulatory environment, the corporate governance, it operates within a legal and a regulatory framework that sets the standards for bringing transparency, clarity, and disclosures, as well as the ethical behavior. The laws and regulations which changes across jurisdictions. If you see the corporate governance best practices, the various guidelines and the various codes of conduct exist to promote effective corporate governance, the control mechanism. The examples include the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, that is SOX in the United States, and the UK Corporate Governance Code, and the OECD Principles of Corporate Governance as few examples. With respect to the corporate social responsibility, CSR, an important aspect of the corporate governance is the integration of the social and environmental concerns into the business operations. The CSR initiatives which aim to promote sustainable practices and ethical behavior as well as a positive social impact. It is mandatory for the corporates to show the CSR activities they have conducted and what portion of the profitability they have spent towards conducting CSR activities. That's why the social audit is conducted, which is very relevant to know in this respect. Like the accounts audit and quality audit, similarly, social audit is conducted for assessing the CSR responsibility of a corporate. The corporate governance sets the framework for responsible and ethical business practices, ethical conduct at ethical thinking approach of the corporate, ensuring responsibility and accountability, clarity and transparency in the activities, and also the fairness. It involves multiple stakeholders, those who are involved directly and indirectly for their business interest, and relies on the principles, set principles, and also with respect to the organization structures and the best practices in order to guide the decision making as well as protect the interests of the stockholders or the shareholders and other stakeholders of the business. With respect to the evolution of the corporate governance over the period of time, the evolution of corporate governance has been a dynamic process that has undergone significant changes over the period of time. Here are some of the key highlights in the evolution of the corporate governance. First one, let us discuss about the traditional model. In the early stages, corporate governance was primarily focused on protecting the interest of the company's stockholders or the shareholders, those who have purchased shares of the organization. The management and decision-making power that is rested with the board of directors and at the corporate head office, who were responsible for representing the shareholders' interest. With respect to the stakeholder perspectives, over time, there has been a shift from the shareholder-centric model to a stakeholder-centric model. Shareholder includes only those who have purchased the stock of the organization, whereas stakeholder are all the stakeholders in the business, directly, indirectly involved, starting from the vendors, customers, competitors, employees, the bankers, financial agencies, etc. The corporate governance started recognizing the importance of considering the interest of other stakeholders. The employees, customers, suppliers, the broader society as a whole. The focus expanded to include the environmental and the social aspects alongside the financial performance of the organization. With respect to increased regulation in response to the corporate scandals and financial crisis, there has been a significant increase in the regulatory framework parameter that is aimed at strengthening the corporate control mechanism, the governance practices, as for example, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of the United States, as well as the Corporate Governance Code in the United Kingdom, are the set higher standards for bringing transparency, clarity, accountability, and the board independence. With respect to the board independence and diversity, the emphasis is given on the board independence as well as diversity has grown over the period of time. Independent directors are expected to bring objectivity and unbiased judgment in order that the board, with respect to the board decision making, diversity, including the gender, ethnicity, and professional backgrounds, that has been recognized as important for effective decision making as well as avoiding the groupthink. With respect to the shareholder activism, shareholders activism has gained prominence as the investors, including the institutional shareholders, that is, the bankers, financial institutions, and activists hedge the funds actively engage with the companies in order to influence their control mechanism or the governance practices and strategic decision making. Shareholder activism has put pressure on the companies to be more responsive and accountable to towards the investors of the organizations. With respect to the focus on the risk management and compliance, corporate governance has increasingly emphasized, focused the importance of the effective risk management as a essential criteria and compliance with the laws and regulations. Companies are expected to have robust internal control systems and risk management processes in place to mitigate the risks that is being encountered and ensure the ethical code of conduct. With respect to the sustainability and ESD integration, environmental, social, and governance, that is ESG factors, have gained significant attention in corporate governance. The investors and stakeholders now expect companies to integrate the sustainability considerations into their strategy. Sustainability with respect to environmental friendly practices, manufacturing practices, etc. Risk management and reporting. The ESG performance, that is the environmental, social, and governance performance, has become an essential criteria for assessing the company's long-term viability. With respect to the technology as well as the digital governance, the rapid advancement of the technology has introduced new challenges and opportunities for the corporate governance. The boards need to address the cyber security, the data privacy, and the digital transformation strategies. The integration of technology into governance processes, such as the digital board portals and the electronic voting, has also enhanced the transparency and efficiency of the entire system. With respect to the shareholders' rights and proxy access, the shareholders' rights have been reinforced in many jurisdictions, it allowing them to have a more active role in the corporate decision making. Proxy access provisions enable the shareholders to nominate the directors directly on the company's proxy statement, providing them with greater influence over the board composition in the annual general body meeting as well as the board meeting. The corporate culture and ethics relates to the corporate governance has increasingly emphasized the role of the corporate culture and the ethical conduct in driving long-term value creation. That is the value system that has been shown by the top management. Companies are expected to establish a strong ethical framework, promote a culture of integrity, and ensure responsible business practices throughout the organization. Includes all the functional departments and activities. International standards and best practices includes there has been a global convergence towards adopting the international standards and best practices in the corporate governance. Organizations such as the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, and the International Corporate Governance Network have developed guidelines and principles in order to promote the good governance practices all over the world, globally. Executive compensation includes, it has been a topic of increasing scrutiny in the corporate governance. There has been a shift towards more transparent and performance-based compensation structures, aligning the executive remuneration with the long-term sustainable performance and the shareholder value creation. With respect to the whistleblower policy, whistleblower protection, the protection of the whistleblowers has gained attention in the corporate governance. Those who want to expose the wrongdoings of the organization. The whistleblower policies and mechanisms have been implemented to encourage the employees to report the unethical behavior, practices, wrongdoings within the organizations that harms the stakeholders at large without fear of retaliation, promoting transparency, clarity, and accountability. With respect to the board evaluation and accountability, regular board evaluations have become more practice to assess the effectiveness and the performance of the board of directors, includes the functional and non-functional directors. Evaluations helps identify areas for improvement and ensure the boards are accountable to the shareholders and also to the other stakeholders of the organization. Shareholder engagement and proxy voting relates to shareholder engagement has evolved beyond the traditional annual general body meetings. Companies are proactively engaging with the shareholders and seeking their input on key decisions. Proxy voting has also become more important, allowing the shareholders to exercise their voting rights on the corporate matters annually. Long-term focus includes there has been a growing recognition of the need for the companies to adopt a long-term perspective in their governance practices of sustainability. This includes considering the environmental as well as the social risks, investing in research and development for continuous basis improvement, upgrading the product and upgrading the service levels, and focusing on the sustainable growth strategies rather than short-term financial gains. With respect to the role of institutional investors, the institutional investors such as the pension funds and the asset managers have played an increasingly active role in the corporate governance. They have pushed for improved governance practices and engaged with the companies on the ESG issues and exercise their voting rights to influence the corporate decision-making process. With respect to the transparency and reporting, there is a greater emphasis on the transparency and disclosures in the corporate governance. Organizations are expected to provide the accurate as well as timely information to the stakeholders, that is the vendors, customers, employees, the financiers, etc., including the financial reporting terms of financial statements for disclosing, sustainability reporting, and non-financial disclosures related to ESG factors. Evolving role of the directors. The role of directors has evolved from the passive oversight to the active participation in the strategic decision making. Directors of the organizations are expected to bring diverse skills and expertise, challenge the management when necessary, and also act in the best interest of the organization and for all its stakeholders. With respect to the continuous learning and adaptation, the corporate governance is a constantly evolving field, and companies need to continuously learn continuous for improvement and adapt the same and stay updated with the emerging trends and practices, latest regulations, and best practices, and for the interest of all. This involves ongoing education and development for the directors and executives in order to enhance their governance knowledge and the skills required. With respect to the evolution of the corporate governance globally, in early 1991, UK, US, and Canada began modern trend of developing the corporate governance guidelines and codes of best practices in response to the problems in corporate performance and lack of effective board and pressure from the institutional investors. It is the system by which the organizations are directed and controlled. The most significant changes in the code are expanded definition of the independent directors that includes chairperson, increase in the proportion of the independent directors, and separate chairperson and CEO. Then strict guidelines on the membership of committees, focus on the internal audit and control functions. Some of the difference of the corporate governance between the small and large organizations in committee members as well as in terms of number of independent directors. With respect to the business ethics, which refers to the moral principles and values and that guides the behavior as well as decision making process of the individuals working in the organizations in the business world. Here are some of the key points which highlights regarding the aspect of business ethics. First is the integrity. The business ethics emphasizes the importance of honesty, truthfulness, and adherence to the ethical standards or practices or principles. It involves acting with the integrity as well as maintaining a high moral standards in all the business interactions. With respect to the corporate social responsibility, businesses have a responsibility to consider the impact of their actions on the society and community and the environment. The corporate social responsibility involves voluntarily taking actions that benefit the society at large, such as philanthropy, environmental sustainability, and ethical labor practices. With respect to fairness and justice, business ethics promotes fairness and justice in dealings with their employees, customers, suppliers, as well as other stakeholders in the business. This includes providing equal opportunities, fair wages, and ethical treatment to all the individuals, the stakeholders, those who are involved in the business activities and operations. With respect to transparency, it involves being open, clear, and honest in terms of business activities. It includes providing accurate, relevant information to the stakeholders, avoiding any sort of conflict in interest, as well as being accountable for their actions and decisions. With respect to respect of stakeholders, business ethics recognizes the importance of respecting the rights, interest, as well as dignity of all the stakeholders. It includes the employees, customers, investors, suppliers, and the community. This involves avoiding the exploitation as well as discrimination in any manner and any form of unethical behavior or treatment. With respect to compliance with the laws and regulations, the ethical business, it operates within the boundaries of the applicable laws and regulations. They strive to understand as well as comply with the legal parameters, requirements, ensuring their actions are lawful as well as ethical. With respect to ethical leadership, the ethical leaders set the tone for an organization, set the standard, role model example by demonstrating and promoting the ethical behavior practices. They lead by example, fostering a culture of integrity, trust, and ethical decision making throughout the organization. With respect to whistleblowing and reporting mechanisms, the business should establish mechanism that encourages the employees as well as the stakeholders to report any sort of unethical behavior without any fear of retaliation. With respect to whistleblowing protects the interest of the both individuals and the organization by exposing the wrongdoings and allowing for the corrective measures or corrective actions accordingly. Avoiding conflicts and interest with respect to businesses should actively identify and address the conflicts of the interest that may compromise the ethical decision making. This involves disclosing and managing the personal, financial, or professional conflicts in order to ensure a fair and unbiased judgments, equal justice to all. With respect to ethical marketing and advertising, the businesses should avoid deceptive or misleading marketing practices and misguiding, which misguides the public at large, and ensure that advertising messages are truthful and accurate. Ethical marketing respects consumer rights and hence promotes the product and services in an honest as well as responsible manner. With respect to the ethical supply chain management, the businesses have a responsibility to ensure that the supply chains adhere to the ethical standards, includes fair labor practices, human rights, and environmental sustainability, etc. This involves engaging with the suppliers who share similar ethical values. With respect to the continuous ethical improvement, the ethical business practices that require ongoing commitment and continuous improvement. Organizations should regularly assess and reassess their ethical policies and practices by seeking ways and means to enhance the ethical standards and address the emerging ethical challenges. By embracing these key points, the business can build trust, understanding, and maintain a positive reputation and contribute to the betterment of the society as a whole, while also achieving a long-term success or sustainability. The common features of business ethics are like it differentiates between the right and wrong, what one should do, what one should not do. It deals with operating issues in organizations. It relates to the issue of corporate social responsibility, that is the social obligation of the corporate houses. It directs the organizations to be good corporate citizens. It describes the descriptive, that is what is being done, and normative ethics, what should be done. The features of ethical organization includes it makes organizations effective and treats the customers the best way possible. It follows the concept of wealth maximization, and it builds a culture of high level integrity. It focuses on the families of the employees and deals with the ethical dilemmas in the teams. With respect to the pillars of corporate governance, the objective is to help an organization in implementation of the strategy or like the accountability. It relates to owning the rewards and risk with respect to the value proposition in an organization, which is applicable in all the levels, starting from lower to the top management. With respect to fairness, it involves effective communication, two-way communication, and treating all the stakeholders equally. With respect to transparency and clarity, it provides credibility to the organization and relevant information to all the stakeholders to update themselves about the organization. With respect to the integrity, it comes through a professional culture to encourage the employees in order to perform at the best of their capacity. With respect to social responsibility, the decisions taken at the top management level to benefit the organizations with a clear understanding about the practices which they are following in the interest of all. Now, with respect to the models of corporate governance, let us discuss about Canadian model. Canada is a country of French influence. Until 19th century, the industries are basically family-run business, but over the past 5 decades, the things have changed and it resembles the US industry structure, and it seems one of the early initiatives in corporate governance. With respect to the UK, United Kingdom, American model, more transparency and accountability in the US corporates after the SOX Act is passed in 2002 as below. First is the re-establish the investor confidence, then improve the accuracy and transparency in financial reporting, accounting services, of the listed organizations and increase corporate responsibility, and then auditing independently by the independent or statutory auditors. With respect to the German model, the German is known as the hub of industrialization, with the company law exporting sophisticated machinery, bankers, the shareholders, investors, and rich German families. In the second half of the 19th century, the corporate governance process initiated in Germany. With respect to Italian model, in the second half of 20th century, stock market gained importance after the family-run business, then industrial policy for the investor protection continued after the commercial banks started. Subsequently, the corporate governance process started in an organized form in Italy. With respect to the France model, France controlled by religion and state was the main borrower, lending through mortgage and coin for currency for the money transaction with industry in a conservative look. Subsequently, the corporate governance process was started, introduced in phase wise with the economic development activities. With respect to the Japanese model, Japan was a conservative country with the business families at the bottom of pyramid. Change in the business started after the World War II with a new culture in the industries, which was mix of private as well as state capitalization. Fall in the family business started during depression, and then in 1945 Americans bring the changes in the economy. Subsequently, the concept of corporate governance started. With respect to Indian model, desirable corporate governance code was given by the Confederation of Indian Industry in 1998. The Ministry of Finance, Government of India, formed a committee in order to examine the roles, responsibility, duties of the auditors, those who are involved, assigned. And Indian model has mandatory compliance with regard to the board of directors, audit committee, compliance to the whistleblower policy, shareholder rights, and performance evaluation of the board members. With respect to the corporate governance and strategy, there exists a strong relationship between the corporate governance and the strategy. It focuses on the stakeholder of the organizations, and it relates to the set of rules and policies of the organization, and it helps the organizations in effective strategic decision making process. It assists in developing fairness towards the investors, as well as it distinguishes the role of managers and shareholders. And then the corporate, the governance strategy gives direction to the organization in which it has to move or proceed further to perform effectively. With respect to the challenges of the corporate governance, it is all about the direction, management, and control of an organization due to various issues and challenges that is faced in uncertain situations. First one is appointment of independent directors is mandatory, but should be without any bias, as well as in a very ethical manner. Second is the accountability towards the stakeholders. As a major challenge, organization should take up welfare measures for the stakeholders. With respect to the board appointments, it may be sometimes biased due to the pressure from the promoters and hence should be careful while appointing for the success of organization. With respect to the conflict in the organization, it should be resolved as a challenge for the success of organization. And with respect to the level of mistrust, it is a challenge to regain the trust and of the stockholders, of the shareholders, and other stakeholders to build the credibility. With respect to the performance evaluation of the directors, it is a challenge to implement the corporate governance. And with respect to the role of promoters, it is to look after the interest of the organization as a whole. And it relates to the removal of the independent directors, it is a challenge sometimes due to the pressure from the investors as well as promoters. With respect to bringing transparency and clarity issues due to the unethical practices of many organizations. Hence, strong core values of the organizations only will help in overcoming the challenges of the external environment that is being faced. Now let us discuss with respect to the summary and conclusion of the governance control mechanism of the corporates. The corporate governance refers to a system of rules, regulations, trends and practices and the processes through which an organization is being directed as well as controlled. Corporate governance involves balancing the interests of various stakeholders, that includes the shareholders, that includes the top management, that includes the employees of the organizations, then it also includes the consumers who buy the product and avail the services, the vendors who supply the raw materials which is used as an input for the organization, and the wider community. With respect to good corporate governance practices, it promotes transparency, clarity, accountability, and integrity in the management of an organization, which in turn enhances the investor confidence level and helps to attract the capital, that is the funding sources from various the debt fund or equity fund. With respect to the key components of the corporate governance, it includes the board of directors at the corporate head office or registered office, and the executive compensation carefully decided with respect to the performance linked, and the stockholder or the shareholder rights and disclosures and transparency and risk management factors issues. If you see the corporate governance frameworks as well as the guidelines, it differs across the countries in the world and industries. But the underlying principles, however, it remains consistent with respect to bringing fairness, with respect to the bringing the accountability, fixing accountability and responsibility for the employees based on their position and responsibility given, and the accountability should be fixed for the employees, that is the questionability, and transparency, bringing transparency or clarity in functioning. With respect to the effective corporate control mechanism or the governance, which helps to prevent the corporate scandals, the fraud, as well as the unethical behavior and practices, and fosters for a long-term sustainable growth for the organizations and economy as a whole, keeping in view the economic conditions situation of the country. With respect to the corporate governance, which helps to mitigate the conflicts, that is conflict resolution mechanism, and also the conflicts that may arise by the stakeholders based on the business interest, by establishing the mechanism that ensures for speedy settlement and resolving the issues with a fair and ethical decision-making approach and thinking. It reduces the corporate governance conflict resolution process, reduces the risk of self-dealing, as well as it prioritizes the interest of the various stockholders and other stakeholders of the organization. With respect to the effective corporate governance mechanism, it enhances the company's reputation as well as the brand value, that is the image the corporate has and developed.
This is Kashmir,
over the
an
period
area
of
of the
time.
Union Territory.
It demonstrates a commitment to the ethical business practices, ethical approach, thinking, and conducting the activities ethically, which can attract the customers, which can attract the investors, the business partners, the financiers, the bankers, and overall all other stakeholders in the business. The corporate governance provides a framework for managing the risk efficiently that may arise because of the continuous changing of the external environment, and addressing the potential issues proactively. That is how to encounter or face or manage these risks. It promotes effective risk management strategies, which has been devised to handle the risk based on the empowerment approach and decision making, and ensures that the risks are properly identified and the process is being followed and it to ensure timely resolving, not only to bring confidence of the stakeholders, but also as a matter of policy and image of the corporate, and properly assessed, and the mitigation, that is how to resolve through a standard process mechanism. The stakeholder engagement is an essential aspect of the corporate governance or the control mechanism. Considering the interest as well as the concerns of the various stakeholders of the organizations, the stakeholders, they take keen interest on the business activities, because if the company runs in profit, they will be benefited out of that. Hence, their concerns are to be taken care. The organizations can build stronger relationships with all the stakeholders, and that will help for quick response, and higher level of involvement and commitment by the stakeholders. And also, it fosters a mutual understanding, mutual trust, based on which the organizations can move faster with the support, cooperation, and assistance, and gain valuable insights into the operations, and also the into the based on the level of impact. In conclusion, the corporate governance is a vital aspect of the modern business and hence plays a crucial role in ensuring the success as well as the sustainability of the organizations. With respect to the strong corporate governance practices that has been developed over the period of time by the corporate head office, which contributes towards a company's uh, reputation building and also facing the level of competition with a challenge as they build the trust among the investors, those who have provided funding support, timely funding support, the customers, those who buy the organization's product or avail the services, and other stakeholders like the insurance organizations, the uh, experts, that is the consultants, those who advise for the betterment, for the improvement of the company's operations, and all other stakeholders of the organization. Companies with effective corporate governance structures are more likely to attract as well as retain the skilled employees, those who are treated as an asset for the company, and those who really do the bring the productivity for the company, as they provide a clear understanding and framework for the decision making in crucial issues, and also for faster problem solving and taking accountability and responsibility for the activities, business activities and operations of the organizations. With respect to the role of the board of directors is pivotal in corporate governance, as they are responsible for overseeing the organization's strategic decisions, that is crucial for the future of the organizations, monitoring the performance levels with the periodic performance review, quarterly, monthly, as they deemed fit, as well as ensuring the compliance of the laws and regulations with respect to the regulatory parameters framework of the government. With respect to the transparency and disclosure are the key elements of the corporate governance, as they enable the stakeholders to make informed decisions and hold the company accountable for its actions. Continuous improvement and adaptation of the corporate governance practices are very much crucial to address the emerging challenges and align with the evolving societal expectation. Regulatory authorities and industry bodies play a significant role in establishing and enforcing the corporate governance standards. But ultimately, it is the responsibility of the organizations to embrace and uphold good governance corporate practices. Overall, effective corporate governance is very much critical factor in fostering a trust, understanding, integrity, as well as sustainable growth in the business world. Corporate governance is not a one size fits all approach. Companies should tailor their governance practices to their specific industry, size, Organization structure, flexibility and adaptability are crucial in implementing the effective corporate governance measures. The tone of the top set by the senior management and the board of directors is instrumental in fostering a culture of accountability, ethical behavior throughout the organization. Leadership commitment to good governance practices principles is vital for the successful implementation. Investors increasingly consider corporate governance as a key factor when making investment decisions. Organizations with robust governance framework are more likely to attract capital and enjoy sustainable long-term growth. Corporate governance should go beyond compliance with the legal requirements and regulations. Companies should strive for the best practices continuous basis, and education and awareness about the corporate governance among the directors, executive employees is essential. Training programs and initiatives can help individuals understand the roles responsibilities. In an ever-changing business environment, corporate governance needs to evolve to address the emerging issues such as cybersecurity, data privacy, environmental sustainability. Regular reviews, updates to the governance framework are necessary to remain relevant and effective. Ultimately, strong corporate governance is an ongoing commitment. Companies that prioritize the governance as a fundamental aspect of the operations better equipped to navigate the challenges, build resilience, create long-term value for the stakeholders. Hence, corporate governance protects the interest of the society to protect the stakeholders, regulators formed to implement the codes to bridge the gap between the corporate and the stakeholders. There are various issues and challenges based on the organization structure as well as implementing the business ethics. Thank you for your patient listening.